with football is you're learning new things. If you're playing free, if you're playing without thinking, you're kind of in that flow state, whatever you want to call it. Yep. You're so much of a better player. And I'm not preaching follow God, you'll be a better football player, but I'm saying follow God and have your priorities straight, you'll play free. Wow. And you'll give yourself the best chance, and, get used to working hard.
Come on now. Welcome back to the Love Leadership Podcast. Man, we got a bonus episode today and a dude that I respect so much. Brody Buck is our guest today. Come on, wherever you're at today, put it together for this, man. I'm so grateful that you're here with us today, dude.
Yeah, man, I'm thankful that you reached out and asked me to come on.
Yeah, so recently, Pastor Todd and I were sitting down with Brody, having breakfast, connecting with him, and we thought, man, let's get him on the Leadership Podcast. There's so many principles, I think, from your story that are going to inspire our audience today. I think there's a lot of takeaways. I really look at you as a next generation leader, man. And so really excited to dive into your story a little bit today. Here's a fun fact about Brody and I. So I met Brody right before he was going to head off to play football at Northwest Missouri State. I don't know if it was Zach Lucky or Jake who introduced us, but the reality was I was hanging with those two, and somehow we crossed paths that summer before you went off to school. And here's the cool thing. The last 4 years over the holidays, we have our holiday breakfast. Zach, Jake, Brody, and I get breakfast, and it's been just awesome, man, just seeing what God has done in your life over the last, 5 years. It's just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's crazy how our past, just as I was starting my Christian path, you were there. I remember thinking, I'm going off to college, starting a new chapter. I really want to put both feet on the ground and walk the rest of my life that I have towards Christ. And you were the person there. You're like, you got to stamp the flag in the ground and start, and that's when I ended up doing the prayer or whatever. But that was my starting point.
I remember that, dude, leaning up against the garage, God's garage, baby. We were praying that prayer, and it's been cool to just see what God has done in your life. Maybe for our listeners, let us know a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, just a little bit of your family background. I think it'd be helpful for them to understand context of where you're coming from.
Sure. Grew up Omaha, ended up graduating at Millard North, went to Burke. I shouldn't say it to some of the listeners, but I went to Burke for 3 years, graduated at Millard North. That's where my Christian walk started. I grew up Catholic, went to some of those classes when I was a kid, but my Christian walk truly started after seeing Jake Matthew live out his faith. And I was just so perplexed that a guy like me, who's just a dumb football player, could follow the Lord. So that's when I started asking questions, and God just grabbed a hold of my heart, and everything changed. So fast forward to the summer right before college, I'm like, I got to make this decision of, am I going to follow Christ or not? And, I ended up did. And then football started. I went to Northwest Missouri State to play D2 football. That brought a whole new challenge to my life. Football is always kind of this thing that came pretty easy. And then college, bunch of challenges and different things happen, and later in life, obviously more. But, that's a pretty 2-minute overview of who I am.
So cool, man. So something that we share in common is we both have backgrounds in football. Yep. You're still playing. I'm done. Yeah. I'm not putting the cleats on.
You look like you could play a couple of years. Come on, man.
Maybe. I always tell people, just give me 2 snaps. 2 snaps, we'll be good. Yeah. Maybe a series. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you could do it.
So, anyways, just for our listeners, Northwest Missouri State, one of the best Division II programs. So here you are, man, coming out of high school. Even in your athletic journey, I think we'll touch on this a little bit. There's just been these moments where maybe you felt a little bit overlooked. So here you are, you show up on campus, maybe help our listeners understand what that season looked like when you show up into this environment where you're coming to this program that has all this success. Maybe you're feeling a little overlooked. Do I belong?
Right.
Can I make this? Talk us through that first season and some of the things that you were experiencing.
Right. Coming into Northwest, I had a really good year with the Mustangs. We won state, all state, everything. Fun fact, I didn't start the season starting since 7th grade, and this was all senior year was my first year I started the whole entire year. So every year I felt like, I should be starting. I have enough to, get that role, but for whatever reason, overlooked, things happen. Coach didn't see it. So I kind of had this chip on my shoulder a little bit. And then I go into Northwest where, I was talking to a couple D1 schools where they're promising stuff, things didn't happen, and so yeah, more chip to the shoulder,
Oh, yeah.
more chip, like, 'cause I felt like I should have been D1 guy, blah, blah, blah. Every guy feels that way, but
for sure.
Coming to Northwest, they were coming off of, they just won a national championship and they're going to go back to back this year. And I mean, the culture, these guys, like, I'm trying to like put myself in their shoes. They did things that we would have got, crucified for because they were just so good. Like they were just like, everybody was just a beast, monster, super athletic, crazy talented. And they're like, I think the closest game they finished that year was 15 points differential. Wow. And that was in the semis. But yeah, so I go into this culture where like football is everything, and so I'm newly Christian, young kid, love football, whatever. So I'm just thinking, okay, like I'll come to Northwest and meet a bunch of Christians. I just in my head for whatever reason I thought that I would meet an older Christian that could kind of take me under his wing. That didn't happen. The first day I got there, so we would do these things called devotional, which is basically just like 5-10 minute little discussion about either the Word of God or something to do with faith after every practice, which was really cool tradition there. And I show up, talk to that kid, and I'm like, hey, I'm a new Christian, I just would love to talk about God. And he's like, oh, it's awesome, man. That was it. Because the culture was like movies. Like it was like all the seniors hated the freshmen. If you were a freshman, you didn't talk to a senior. It was literally like that. And he was an upperclassman. So there was no easy bridge or someone I could go under the wing with. So I kind of really struggled that first year or first semester, I should say, because not only was my safe place of football becoming harder and harder because everybody was so much better than I was. And I was, a little bit of a late bloomer, whatever you want to call it. Everybody was at this really high level, and I felt like I was behind the curve. And then my Christian walk, that I was just starting to walk with Jesus, was pretty rough. Like there was no one around me. I wasn't even going to church at the time. So that was like a pretty interesting first semester, and then it's college too. You don't know anybody.
For sure. And so I think even for our listeners, like one of the things that the reason why I wanted to start here with your story is when we talk about this idea of leadership and developing a leadership culture, man, it's hard to step into a culture when that doesn't exist. What do you do? Right. It's like healthy leaders build healthy leaders, right? And that process just kind of turns itself over, but you're walking into a culture where that's not happening. Right. And so here you are, you're like, man, what do I do in the midst of this? And so, how did you handle it? What I think God showed up in a big way in your life in that season and kind of started to move you down the right path. What did that look like?
Oh, definitely. I was at the point where I was just so upset with my situation, so upset with football, everything, that I'm just going to quit and leave. Wow. And so I had made up my mind that I was just going to quit, go start renovating homes with my dad, just kind of put football and everything past me. And so as I'm going up to my head coach's office, I prayed a prayer just like, hey, God, if you want me to stay, do something, basically, was my prayer. And I show up, I'm like kind of crying a little bit, telling my coach I'm quitting this goal that I had. And I think he just kind of knew that I wasn't ready to quit. And he kind of gave me some line like, Brody, you're looking to football for something it's never going to give you. It's never going to give you love. It's never going to give you satisfaction. It has to come from yourself. And I took it as that's to come from God. Like I was giving football a place that it never deserved to be. Wow. And so from that day forward, it was like, okay, God wants me here. Like I'm going to be a minister to this football team no matter what it takes, because God showed up in that prayer and he wants to use me at this place. And so from that day on, I was like, let's go. Like I just had this like a different sense or a different encouragement behind me because I knew that God blessed it. God blessed football, and so I just got this bright idea to get connected to the local church. Come on. Like that was this crazy epiphany. But started getting connected to the local church. There's some great people, Maryville, Missouri, that stood by me and continually invested in me. And it was different since then, because I'm like, I know I'm here. I know I'm here for a reason. And then God kind of started putting people around me.
It's so good, man. Like, I hear that, and I just feel about the gift of perspective that you received through your coach in that conversation that really opened you up to even a mindset that you hadn't really embraced yet.
Right.
Which is that I need to find my fulfillment and satisfaction outside the thing that I'm pursuing.
Right.
And all the time we talk about the audience of one. So if you're listening right now, I think there's something that you can grab from that. Man, I'll tell you what, we can love what we do, but when we make the thing that we do a God, it's a dangerous thing. And I think you learn that perspective at a young age. So talk about like the mentorship, and then you started to go on this journey at Northwest where you're wanting to sort of see that culture change for Christ, specifically in the locker room.
Yep.
But it sounds like 2 years of drought and just laborious sort of consistency. Tell our listeners about that.
So, I start getting connections to this church, and there's this great man named Jason Hawk, and he just chose to invest in me. And like, when I mean invest, he would spend time at least 2 times a week meeting with me individually. And I needed it. Like, I had so many rough edges, and, I needed somebody to look up to and be an example for me to start leading, So, and he was just a great man that did that. And so as I'm getting poured into, and he's telling me all the things I'm doing wrong and everything, I'm like, okay, I got to start grabbing some dudes around me. And like you kind of brought up the drought. I mean, the first 2 years of me really pouring out and being a leader for Christ, there was not a lot of fruit that lasted. I mean, there was enough fruit for me to keep going. Like, guys were interested and stuff like that. But to change a culture, I mean, it takes a little bit of time, steadfastness, and I kind of understood that, but it was like, dang, it would be nice if, there's another guy on the team, like just one, because I'm not saying there's no Christians on the team, but like nobody was living out their faith.
Wow.
Like it was very apparent. Like even the guys that were supposed to be looked on, like guys praying before games and stuff like that, those were the guys partying. Those are the guys doing whatever they wanted outside of, Sunday or whatever. And I was there too. I'm just saying there's nobody really living it out, where like the Christian culture was very superficial. And so, like I said, I'm like, okay, I got to start with 1 or 2 guys and just continually invest in them. And it ended up being 3 guys. But just every week, every time I saw him, be like, hey, you gonna take this God thing serious? Hey, you want to read a little bit? Like it's just this persistent steadfastness that ultimately led into a bunch of fruit later on. But
yeah, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but there's a couple of principles I want to extract here. And maybe you're a listener and you feel a little overwhelmed, like, who should I invest in? First of all, the principle that he brought to the surface was, I would oftentimes say this, man, as leaders, we're called to be rivers, not lakes. It's not about just being poured into, right? But it's also about taking what's been poured into us and then giving that away. And if you're in that season, I'm just telling you right now, if you're a leader listening, you will be the healthiest when you have a Paul in your life, somebody that's investing in you, a Barnabas, somebody that you can run with, and a Timothy, somebody that you're investing in. And I think that the thing that you're bringing to the surface here with the 3 guys that you poured into is sometimes when we think about investment and leadership and giving away what's been given to us, we just get overwhelmed by like the who.
Right.
But if we'll simplify it down to this principle of investing better in fewer, who will then invest better in fewer, now I think we can start to create some momentum, and that's what was created. So maybe fast forward a couple of years, some of the fruit of hanging in there, not quitting, enduring as a leader, and staying faithful.
Yeah. I mean, God just for whatever reason chose to use me as the guy who kept the ball rolling. And I truly felt like I was falling flat on my face, failing every single time. But I just kept going. I just kept trying. And God blessed it. He completely blessed it. I mean, those guys, those 2-3 guys I was investing in, at the time when I was investing in them, they were like, I could care less about God. I mean, I know it's good. I know it's something I should do, but it was always it never really felt like it was from them that they really wanted to know about God. And then fast forward, 2 years of this constant progress of now they're leaders. Now they're doing exactly what I was doing, but with younger people.
Come on, man.
And it got to so much fruit where, they had 2 or 3 guys they're invested in. Those guys had 2 or 3 guys they're invested in. And it like went 2 or 3 fold, And this was all just, I was in college for 5.5 years, not 4. But shout out COVID. But so I got to experience like literally front row seats of just God's faithfulness, God allowing me to see fruit in the harvest. And I was just telling this to you guys, like watching those guys go from uninterested of Christ to leading for Christ. That's the fruit that I'm going to hold on to for the rest of my life, because I know it's true. I know that process works. I was telling you that one time, it's kind of addicting to be around because it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful to see someone completely change their life, and now they're, leading people towards that life.
For sure, isn't it? It's just really cool, man, that God invites us into the process as leaders to play a small part. Like, look at how he's blessed your yes, your willing heart. You've been faithful with little, and he entrusted you with more. And it's cool, man. You've since graduated from Northwest, and I was just asking you off the air here, like, yo, what's the culture like there? And I think that's cool for you to hear from you that, like, now a majority of the team are Christians, and there's still Bible studies happening, and it's just really a testament to your yes. Really, it's a testament to even just the divine conversation that your coach had with you when you were ready to tap, man.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like he had any like he wasn't trying to preach to me. Like he didn't really have the Bible in mind. He's just like, hey, you're looking at football as something it's never going to give you. It's never going to give you peace, love, satisfaction, which is just one of the best, just factual slap in the faces that I needed at the time.
So how is that, how does that show up even in your life today? Because you're still playing the game, and you played a lot of football after that conversation. But I think, there's not a lot of our listeners are playing professional football, by the way, but they're doing something.
Right.
And so can you talk about the freedom that you experienced when you changed your perspective?
Yeah. So once I kind of got that slap in the face, like, all right, like I'm going to be here. I'm going to give it every single thing that I have. Every part of my being I'm giving to football because this is my ministry. And that could be your job. That could be anything. But it's like I'm not going to hold back anything. Wow. And I would tell guys, as I would get psycho in the weight room or something like that. I would just be like, I have different fuel than you guys. like my fuel is God's word, and God's word says that like, don't do things for man, do things for me. And how much harder would you work knowing that like you're here for a purpose that your creator gave you versus, I just kind of want to play football. Wow. And I kind of found it, not to shout any guys out, but like I kind of found it easy to become a really hardworking person because it's like I'm doing this for God. I'm not doing this for you guys. Wow. And this pretty well with football as you're learning new things. If you're playing free, if you're playing without thinking, you're kind of in that flow state, whatever you want to call it. Yep. You're so much of a better player. And I'm not preaching follow God, you'll be a better football player. But I'm saying follow God and have your priorities straight, you'll play free. Wow. And you'll give yourself the best chance, and, get used to working hard.
Come on now. That's one thing that I respect, man. I've never been in the weight room with you, never been in the locker room with you, but from afar, I'm like, that dude knows how to grind. And there is just something beautiful. I love that because it's coming from a motivation that wants to honor God and be a good steward of what you've been given. And so maybe let's fast forward beyond college. Obviously, you had to work through COVID, and I'm sure there were some challenges in that. Mm-hmm. Maybe walk us through, as your career finished up at Northwest, and then just as you turned over a new chapter in your life, what did that look like in the door that God opened up for you to continue playing?
Man, being on this side of it, it's so easy to see how God just was there at every step of the way. Wow. So basically, I had a good career at Northwest, not great. I only started 1 year. I had pretty good stats, not great stats. So my hopes of playing the NFL were a hope. It was a long shot. But I kind of was at the point where why wouldn't I? You know, if I have these gifts, why wouldn't I? Because I'm just going to bless God in the process. So I kind of just decided that, all right, I'm gonna give it a shot to play at the next level. And so I looked at all levels, next level, not just NFL. I'm scouring, am I going to play arena football? Am I going to play over in Europe? Am I going to go play in Canada? And this XFL, USFL thing was so new. This spring football thing was so new that I wasn't even considering it. You know, honestly, I'm just like, they're going to take practice squad guys and guys have been around. They're not looking for guys like me. And so I kind of just threw it off the table. And so January 7th or 8th I had this little, it was like a showcase all-star game. And so that bowl game would give me film, and I would do like basically a pro day for international teams, Europe and Canada. And so I'm like, you know, I'm gonna go do this, try to show out and try to get some exposure. And so I ended up doing well. But 2-3 days after the game, I found out that I'm injured. There's something wrong with my groin. And it ended up being a sports hernia. And I don't know if any listeners know about sports hernia. It's a pretty 3-month recovery. You know, once I got that, I'm like, my dream's over, you know, because this would be second week of January. My pro day is mid-March. You know, that doesn't line up.
Significant news, significant, startling,
right?
Sort of dream-crushing news.
Yeah, and so I go into a doctor's office, and he's like, you're going to need 6 to 10 weeks of physical therapy, then I can do a surgery. So I'm like, that's not going to work. Like, I was so set on, like, I know I'm going to play football. And at the time, I was training there were some CFL teams, some Canada leagues talking to me, and some European leagues talking to me. Because I'm like, I'm just going to play somewhere. So probably, I don't know, in December sometime before January, I got my passport because I'm like, I'm going to go play in Canada or Europe for some reason.
For sure.
And that's the reason why I thought I got it.
Wow.
So I'm doing all this research on how I can get my sports hernia taken care of. And there's this doctor.
Oh boy.
There's this doctor, Dr. Muschwig. She operates out of Munich, Germany. And her sports hernia repair is different than we do it in the States. There's no mesh involved. It's just, they just suture the wound, and it's a 2-week recovery. And she's operating out of London. And so I'm like, well, guess I'm going to London, you know. And my parents they had the means to cover the surgery, which is fully out of pocket. So that was just like a crazy blessing, where my parents just like, I'm going to invest in you. This is why we work, so that you can pursue your dreams.
Come on, man.
Crazy. I mean, they're awesome. And so I go over there, have this surgery, come back, you know, like, what just happened? I just got a surgery in London. And the day I came back, the USFL coach, one of the USFL coach calls like, hey, stop looking at arena football, European, like, we're going to take you if you're on the draft board for the USFL. And I'm like, this is new.
Wow.
So, and it's real football, you know, it's outdoor, they paying well. Like, it was just this crazy, just God thing. Like, the day I came back from the surgery, that he just had his hand all over it, you know. And then get down there, and it's a culture shock, you know. Like, it's kind of the same thing Northwest. Not a lot of Christians. Everybody's a lot better than me. In my linebacker group, everybody had NFL experience besides me, and so I felt like the ultimate underdog. I felt like I squeaked by getting into this league. And so I'm just grinding away, and, you know, it just comes to the first week, like where we're about to play game 1, and just get a call from my sister, and just the worst news that I could think of at the time. My dad passed. And so this is Wednesday. We play on Saturday. So I fly home. Only thing I could think about is, like, I just need to be with my family. Like, there's nothing else. When a tragedy like that happens, there's nothing else that made sense in my brain. And that was like that for a long time. Just like, I just got to be with my family. That's the only thing I think to do. And so I get home, and my dad flipped houses, and he had 5 ongoing houses. And so I'm just like, all right, I guess I'm going to put on my, worker hat and just try to secure my family, because I don't have any brothers. My sisters couldn't do it. My mom couldn't ask my mom to do it. So I'm like, no one else is going to do it. I got to come home and keep things rolling, I guess. And that was kind of what that time was. I was just surviving. I was just like putting on a smile and survive. My dad's funeral happened, and then so it happened on Saturday. Monday is when I went back for the Stallions to try to play football. My head was just in the clouds, but just try to keep going, I guess.
For sure, man. I think that's, thanks for just being so vulnerable with our listeners. And I think that's just the interesting thing, man. I think about the path that God takes certain people on. Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that look at your life from a distance and say, man, played at a great collegiate program that's won lots of national championships. And here's this guy that's getting to play in the USFL and get paid to play football. And,
right.
But they just don't see the stuff that happens behind the scenes. You know, the pain, the sacrifice, the tears, the hard work, the lonely work, the hours that you're putting in. And I think for me, man, that's just one of the things that I'm so encouraged by your life, is just your ability to endure and persevere. It's so interesting. As a church, we're studying the book of Job right now. And I think Pastor Todd and I were talking about this really interesting formula that Job lays out for us on how to persevere, which is to weep and to worship, to grieve and to glorify, to mourn and to move. And if I'm really honest, and I'm sure there's some more difficult days than others, but as I look at your life, man, you've really embodied that really well. And you've persevered well. Yeah. Maybe help our listeners understand, like, obviously you say you go back and your head's a little bit cloudy, but catches up to speed on, how that season ends. And that kind of brings us to just real time right here. And like, you're getting ready to leave tomorrow, I believe, right? To head back down there, or sometime soon. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, but sometime soon, this man is going back to play his second season. So talk to us about how, in the midst of tragedy, how did you steward that, that short little season that you had? Right.
So just to catch us up to speed, I came back. They're like, hey, you're inactive. Cause we got too many, they only had 7 guys were inactive. The rest 38 guys were activated, which means they could play. So I came back after my dad's funeral. They're like, you're inactive. I'm like, all right, like, why am I here? I'm not sacrificing all of this to not play football. I got to be with my family. And then I get a call on game day, like 7 hours before kickoff. They're like, hey, you're activated. Our other linebacker's sick. And so I'm like, come on. Let's go. And I ended up playing fairly well, had 6 tackles and a sack and 12 snaps. But
come on, he's not competitive.
Yeah. So that game was my first game playing. I felt like my dad was with me. It was like this crazy moment of like my first professional game, first game with Buck on my shoulders, because D2 we didn't have our names.
Wow.
And so it was just like, it was a huge moment for me. Second and third game, or second game goes by, played pretty well. Third game comes in. I'm starting Mike because our starter Mike got injured. My family's at this game. It's blessing of a game. I'm super excited for it. Haven't started Mike since high school, because I always played outside, and have 5 tackles in the first half, and right before half, tear my quad. Just freak thing, no contact, just tear my quad. And, so now I'm starting an 8-9 month recovery, just off this tragedy of losing my dad. And it's just like wave after wave. It felt like I was drowning a little bit. And so I was just kind of survived the rest of my time in Birmingham. And then I came back to Omaha, lived with my mom and my family, and just started jumping into flipping houses. And kind of one of the things that kept me through, I was talking about this with somebody, is so I was in this kind of drowning mindset where I'm just surviving, truly. And so I'm like, I just got to surround myself around people kind of take it back to my story when I was a freshman in college. It's just like, I just got to get around people.
Wow.
I can't be alone. Like I'm truly going to drown. And so that was my mindset of starting a Bible study, was just like, I just got to get around people. And what's interesting is when I started getting people around, like there wasn't really a leader. Like it was just like, I wasn't really ready to lead or anything like that. I was just like, we just got to get people around me. And soon I figured out that like, no, I got to lead this thing too. And I was barely in a place of leading, but I think the pressure of looking at each of the dudes that I met at the gym, each one of their faces helped me get out of the rut for sure. You know, like I'm in this like deep, just lost my dad, just tore my quad, pretty sob story of where my life's at. And then I'm just looking around, I'm like, okay, like I know I'm going to figure it out with God, but are these guys? Wow. You know, like are these guys going to figure it out? And so it helped me, get into my word. It helped me want to become a pure and everything man in all regards, so I can be an example for these guys. So like, I truly think, in that time where it seems like I shouldn't have been leading, it seems like I had so much going on. That's what got me out of it, was leading these guys, through the word of God.
That is so good, man. I hope our listeners catch that nugget there. We talk about this a lot, when we're trying to help people along in the journey, and it's not to dismiss the difficulty of life, man. There's some things on this side of heaven that we'll never be able to fully understand, comprehend, explain away. The reality is, man, is you were invited into a very difficult season.
Right.
But your way out of the difficult season was actually to go serve somebody else.
Yeah.
To say that even in my brokenness, even in my weakness, the Spirit of the living God inside of me actually wants to deposit something in somebody else. And it just reminds me of what Paul said, man, for his strength is made perfect in our weakness.
Yeah.
What a gift that you received in that season, man, to say, you know what? I think my way out of this state of mind that I'm in, and it doesn't explain away the grief and the
right.
pain that even you probably still feel to this day.
Absolutely.
But the way out of it is to actually go and serve the people around me.
Yeah. Because it was grief, sob story, everything. It's all about me, and like, not to say that, I still am grieving with my father and all that kind of stuff, but it was like, it helped shift my mind to where I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about those around me. And I think that's just it's a challenge. It's a challenge to like teeter-totter. Like, I need to care about my grieving process, but I also, what about these people next to me? And it was just, I'm still working on it.
For sure. And you forever will be, man.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty is, leadership is not a place we arrive. It's a journey we go on.
Right.
And I can just tell you, young man, look you dead in the eyes. It's so cool to see what God has done, what he is going to do in this season, and what he'll
right.
continue to do through your yes.
Right.
You gave this audience today the gift of perspective.
Yeah.
And I was telling you offline when we were talking, man, like God's grace in your life, the gift of perspective that you've received at such a young age, it's just going to carry you on and on. It's going to be exciting to see what doors he opens up for you. But man, just know that this community, the Love Leadership community, is behind Brody Buck.
Yes, sir.
As you go off and compete in the USFL, and then hopefully, man, get that shot in the NFL. Because man, there are scouts that are looking at you, right?
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, it was like a blessing and a curse. After my last season, I played 2.5 games, and a Lions scout calls my agent about me, and I'm like, I was so excited because that's a childhood dream, but I was so mad. I'm like, the timing, like you could have got me last year. No, I mean, it's a blessing for sure. So I'm excited for this next season.
Yeah,
so.
Well, we're just believing, man, whatever God has for you, it'll be the best. And no matter whether that's continuing to write your story in football
right.
or something else, dude, we're just excited to see the leadership journey that you continue to go on. Thanks for being with us today, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So listeners, man, if you were encouraged by this episode, we just want to encourage you to share it. Man, Brody was so vulnerable with us, and there's so many principles, I think, in this conversation. I'm thinking of the leader that you know right now that's hurting, that needs some hope, that is ready to tap. I think there are some not only just inspirational principles that Brody gives our listeners today, but there's some very practical things that you can do in a season of pain to hopefully move past it, move through it, come out on the other side a little bit better. So thanks for being with us, and we'll see you soon. What's up, Love Leadership fam? Man, we know that if you're tuning in, you love to lead. And we hope that this episode brought you value. We're going to be dropping a new episode the third Thursday of every month. So subscribe, like. Also, there's more Love Leadership content for you on our channel. Go check it out right now. We can't wait to see you next month.